Hey everyone,
two,
it's Fluffy Toad.
one.
This week is Tyrannical Volcanic Sanguine, so it's a little bit of an annoying week for us casters. So, here are my talents. Here's my character. My WoW armory is in the description below. And with all that out of the way, let's get into the key. So we're going to be doing a supermassive pull with Lust. Something that's really important to do is to keep CC on the Thaumaturges. They do a lot of damage when they're channeling into someone, and as you see, I walk past it anyways. I should have stopped it so that I could help our healer out. We're going to be keeping Living Bomb on CD throughout this whole pull, and the main target that we're going to be funneling into is going to be the Thaumaturge. It's really important that we get that guy down. Since it's a Sanguine week, we're going to be using our Explosive Wave to knock any mobs out of Sanguine who are sitting there and casting. One thing to note about Explosive Wave is I'm not using Greater Explosive Wave. I don't think it's that good, personally, and it kind of knocks the mobs super far away, so it gets harder for them to be all grouped up again. So another thing about Explosive Wave is that you never want to knock it behind the tank. You always want to use Explosive Wave when you're either on top of the tank or when you're pushing mobs sideways so that they are never behind the tank. So you see here, we killed the entire pack except for these two guys. Now the tank runs off to the next pack, but these guys are going to be running through kitchen just because of pathing. This means we're going to be pulling all of those mobs that are in kitchen. Because our tank doesn't realize it, our healer gets healer aggro immediately. This means that we're going to be picking up a little bit more percent than we probably want at this phase, but it's not that big a deal because there's a lot of mobs that you can skip. This is also pretty nice for us because that means we can funnel into a new Thaumaturge and do a bunch of damage. Typically, once all of the Thaumaturges are dead, that's around the point that your tank will start pulling into boss. All of the other mobs don't really matter that much since they don't really do anything, so it's important to know when all of the Thaumaturges are dead, or to be focused on knocking the Thaumaturges out of Sanguine or stopping their cast so that you can move on to the boss as quickly as possible. So as you can see right here, we're pulling into the boss, and it's really important to know where you want to bait. And one place that we're going to be baiting is close to this wall towards this little alcove. And the reason why we're going to be baiting here is so that we can get the blazing charge to stop as quickly as possible and to keep the room as clear as we possibly can. Every time that blazing charge goes out, he has a little line that he fills up, and it can make it a little bit difficult when you're trying to navigate throughout the room later on in the fight. So being super close to the wall not only makes it easier for kiting the ads, which we currently have, but also keeping the boss out of bad. So every time the boss stands in the bad, he gets a little bit of a buff, and that makes the ticking damage he does from volatile mutation do more damage to you and everybody else around you for that for the instances that he's standing within the bad. So that's basically everything from this boss. You want to be baiting towards the closest wall, and that should basically be GG's from there. So for these hunters, I've tried to experiment with ways to stop them from doing their leap, but I haven't found any way, and even if you do stop them right when they start their leap, you'll still get the bleed afterwards, which kind of sucks because there's no real counterplay to it. It is what it is though. So for example, if you use your Ring of Frost and you place it right in front of you, even though you freeze the hunters, you'll still get the bleed, even though they're just stuck there and they're not doing anything. So the moment the animation is triggered, I think that you're gonna get the bleed no matter what you try to do. It's pretty unfortunate. So right here, we're gonna be using one of our chains, and throughout this whole pull, or any pull that you have a hunter, you're gonna be focusing down the hunter. Um, Having them up can kill people within your group, so you need to take them down as quickly as possible. Even though we could be focusing Lahar so that we have a really good funnel target, I think that it's way more important to take down these hunters. You should also remember to be using your blast wave whenever a hunter is pretty low, or whenever a hunter dies, because you do not want the hunters to stand in sanguine for any amount of time. If they stay alive, they're just going to be doing more and more bleed damage to you and your group.
Warping time.
So I'm going to be grabbing this chain here, and it's a little bit of a scary chain to grab just because the bird is right there. But whenever you're using the chain and it's going to go off, it does a lot of initial burst damage to you. So you should be using something to help you out during this period, especially when you're super low health or you're going to be going into grabbing the chain at low health. And you should always be aware if you have the bleed on you when you're about to go grab the chain, just because that can also kill you.
Warping time.
So for this boss, you can avoid the Dragon Strike damage and the bleed if you use Invis right when he jumps towards you. Something else that I should note is that you should never use your Invis on the chains. If you use Invis when you get chains or when you're on the grounding spear, it'll actually remove the chain from you. This is a little bit annoying because you'll have one less defensive to use during this part of the fight. After that, it's just rinse and repeat. You're trying not to die from grounding spear, and you're trying to avoid or completely mitigate your dragon strike if it's on you.
%. 100.0%.
Once again, we're going to be focusing this hunter. It's super important that he dies as soon as possible. The faster that this hunter dies, the quicker we can move on to our next pole.
Warframe time.
The mini boss is definitely not that scary for this week. He's super easy to deal with also, and he provides a really nice
100%.
funnel target. All he really does is put circles on the ground that you have to avoid, and then he puts a big circle around you and your team that does a bunch of damage. but you can probably survive it if you just use your shield. So the scariest thing here is probably the flares, but you can basically mitigate how scary they can be by preventing them from casting altogether. And it can be hard to do if you're not in a coordinated group, but you can do this pretty decently if you're paying attention to your DH tank's CC and just trying to fill in the gap whenever you can. So the scariest mob for Fort Week is definitely the blacksmith for this area. They do a stomp that does a ton of AoE damage to both you and your team, and it'll definitely kill you if you have two stomps go off at once. So it's something that you need to keep in mind for Fortified.
Warping time.
So this boss isn't really that scary. Aside from Might of the Forge, he doesn't really do anything. Something that you should keep in mind is you shouldn't be using your invis as much as you want to use it as a defensive. You shouldn't. The reason why we're not going to be using invis is because you can use it when Blazing Aegis is being casted on you. This will prevent Blazing Aegis from going off entirely, and it'll just be a nice way to help out your team. If you happen to be an idol, you can use Shadow Meld, and this happens to be another way you can avoid Blazing Aegis' damage.
100.0%.
So right here are Druid Shadow Melds, and this is the reason Blazing Aegis doesn't go off.
One 100.0%.
On this pack, we're just going to be focusing the bird. It's the most annoying mob throughout this whole area, but we are going to be occasionally switching to the Lavamancer whenever he has his shield up. On this boss, only 2 people need to pick up the cursed items because this is more than enough to break the shield. On another note, we're going to be using our combustion and mini combustion on CD regardless of the damage amp, just like if we were fighting the second boss. Whenever you get molten gold on you, you want to use the defensive, or if you're confident in your healer's healing, then you can just chill. After that, it's just rinse and repeat. The boss doesn't really do anything else. You should decurse whenever you have the chance to decurse, and after that, you should win. Alrighty, thanks for watching the video. That's about it. See ya.